Today on the Forgiven Nutritionist podcast, I'm talking with Dr. Colleen Cutcliffe. She's the CEO and co-founder of Pendulum. She's had over 25 years of experience leading and managing biology teams in academia, pharmaceuticals, and biotechnology. Prior to starting Pendulum, Colleen was the senior manager in biology at Pacific Biosciences and a scientist at Elan Pharmaceuticals. Colleen received her PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology from Johns Hopkins University and her BA in biochemistry from Wesley College. Because of my conversation with Colleen today, you get to enjoy 20% off your first subscription order with Pendulum. Just use the code FORGIVEN at checkout. Click the Pendulum link in the show notes to get started. And here's a clip from today's show.
What a lot of people don't know is that those drugs are mimicking something that your body actually naturally makes. So you have this natural GLP-1 hormone that this one department in your microbiome is stimulating. So when you eat, it metabolizes your food and it says, oh my gosh, we better increase the amount of GLP-1 that's in your bloodstream so that it can metabolize the sugars you just ate and tell your brain that you're full. And so that's really important because what can happen is that all of us, when we eat, we get a sugar spike and a sugar crash. I mean, many of us are very aware of our sugar highs and our sugar crashes. But when you start to have metabolic disease, that's when your sugar highs are way too high or they're lasting way too long, and your crashes are way too low and they're lasting way too long. And so one of the things that your gut does is it helps stimulate GLP-1, which modulates all your highs and lows of these, crashes and highs of sugar so that they're a little bit more tempered.
Hey everyone, just a quick break to show some gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. This episode is sponsored by Pendulum's GLP-1 product, a unique solution designed to support healthy blood sugar levels and metabolic wellness. GLP-1 is a critical hormone for regulating blood sugar, and Pendulum's advanced formula works with your body to naturally support GLP-1 production. If you're looking to maintain balanced energy, manage cravings, or support your metabolism, Pendulum's GLP-1 product could be a game changer. Click the link in the show notes and use my code FORGIVEN for 20% off your first month's subscription. Give your body the support it needs with Pendulum's GLP-1.
Oh, thank you so much for being on tonight, Colleen. I really appreciate you being on.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Well, I know I just did a little introduction, but why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit more of how you ended up actually in the gut?
Well, my background is not as a marketing expert or a salesperson. It really stems in basic science research. So I have my PhD in biochemistry from Johns Hopkins. I went to Northwestern to do a postdoc. When I finished that, I was actually working at a pharmaceutical company developing drugs for Parkinson's disease and really learned how drugs get developed in these large pharmaceutical companies. Then I joined a DNA sequencing startup company leading the biology team there, so really still squarely in R&D. And that company went public, so went from being a private company to a public company. And on the other side of that, I started Pendulum. And there were two really big things that got me excited about this space. The first was that things like probiotics and yogurts have been on the shelves for a long time, but microbiome science hasn't really existed until DNA sequencing enabled us to really be able to look at all the trillions of microorganisms that are in us and on us. And I really felt like this new technology was enabling us to bring forward a new health modality really through the gut microbiome. And so there was this big opportunity to be a part of the next wave of health and all new opportunities around the gut that could help us with a variety of diseases. I know we're going to get more into that. But the second reason I started this was very personal. And it's because my first daughter was born almost 2 months prematurely. She was in intensive care for a month. She was receiving multiple doses of antibiotics. And around the time that this microbiome science was emerging, this paper came out from Marty Blazer at NYU, and he showed that infants who were on lots of antibiotics later on in life were more prone to chronic diseases like obesity and diabetes. And the Mayo Clinic repeated that study, and they showed that kids under 2 years old who were on a lot of antibiotics were more prone later in life to chronic diseases like obesity and diabetes, but also allergies, asthma, ADHD, celiac disease, all these terrible things that were showing up later because of this early antibiotic treatment really decimating their microbiome. And so on a personal level, I felt like, oh my gosh, we could create products that help millions of people, including my own daughter, we got to give this a shot. And that was when the company was born. And this was almost 12 years ago now.
And all my life, I personally had suffered from depression, anxiety, and then as the years progressed, my hormonal imbalances became more obvious, as well as rheumatoid arthritis. But never once did any doctor ever talk to me about probiotics or my gut health or anything like that. They just wanted to prescribe antibiotics, or some kind of medication, to fix whatever problem they thought was going to be fixed by a medication. And, instead of actually looking or asking further questions about maybe figuring out what was going on, maybe in my gut or something like that.
Yeah, and I to be fair, it is a relatively new science. And if you look at, publications about the microbiome, the last 20 years has been when we went from zero, literally nothing, to exponential growth in learning about the microbiome. And even us, we've been around for almost 12 years, but we've only actually had products in market for a few years because it took us almost a decade of research to even understand where is there opportunity to help somebody with their gut microbiome? How can we really show that the thing is working? And so I think we are in such an amazing time right now because there's been so much learning around gut health, and I'm sure we'll talk about metabolic health. And all of us who are recipients of all that information are just in a really lucky time for all these new, interventions and tools for us to be able to use that didn't exist even just 5 years ago.
Well, that's the beautiful thing that I like about probiotics and even some supplements and nutraceuticals is that it's a much more natural way to kind of take back your health, especially when you're starting from such a place where your body is full of inflammation, which we'll touch on too during the conversation. But when you're full of inflammation and just not feeling well and not figuring out what was going on yet, it's a simple way, I call it a simple way, to kind of start taking back some of your health, to start getting in some habits even sometimes, even if you're not willing to change other things, which I think that you definitely need to change other things as well. But if you're going to start with one thing and that's the only thing you're willing to do and change so far before you go on to the next step, then I think it's one thing that you can take control of, and it's going to definitely help you in the long run for sure.
Completely agreed.
So maybe why don't we start with a couple little basic things. Because I'm all about brain health as well. And again, like I said earlier, I suffered for a lot of years with depression and anxiety. And I like to say now although at the time I look back and I think it was needlessly, but I think my bigger purpose was to get me here full circle. So, which now I get to help people and kind of understand what's going on and help them turn their ship around to get back to their health. But can you kind of explain the gut microbiome, since like you said, research is kind of new and people are fully just starting to understand it, and what's going on in the gut and why is it important that we care?
Absolutely. And I think that your experience of having to kind of become your own experimenter and figure it out on your own is something that a lot of people struggle with. And so I'm hoping that I'm so glad that you decided to enter in this field and be somebody who's sharing out knowledge and information to hopefully help other people navigate these really complicated, this complicated world of supplements. I mean, just looking at all the shelves of bottles of who even knows what, gives you a headache, and just trying to maneuver that is really hard. So hopefully in this podcast, we'll get to dig into some of the myths and facts and how to navigate those shelves. But to start with, the microbiome is all the bacteria and viruses and fungi that live in us and on us. And there are trillions of these bugs that are on us and in us. And they're really important for disease and for our health. And one of the, important things is that we've co-evolved with these strains, and we've come to depend on them for a lot of the things centered around our health. And I think we can all remember a time where we could eat or drink whatever we wanted to. We were super happy and everything was just wonderful. This was the time when your gut microbiome was fully functional. It was at its optimum. And what can happen over time through a variety of things is that we can start to lose those functions. And so, for example, if we go on an antibiotic, we lose microbial functions. When we age, we actually lose microbiome functions. As we go through periods of intense stress, we lose microbiome functions. When we travel and our circadian rhythm changes, we lose microbiome functions. And for us women, when we go through menopause, we lose microbiome functions. So there are all these things that are just part of being a human being that can cause us to lose these microbiome functions. And what happens when we lose these functions is that they are correlated to a wide variety of diseases, from worse metabolism to worse cognitive function and brain health and inflammatory responses and immune responses. And the, depressing part is that we are losing these strains all the time and they're correlated to our diseases. But the beautiful part is that we can change our microbiome. We can give back these functions to our bodies, and we can start to optimize for those things which we've started to become deficient in. And that's really the beauty of the microbiome and some of these next generation probiotics, is that you can give your body back these functions and start to improve all of those different health functions that you may have been like kind of on the decline for a second here.
Yeah, and I don't think that one thing that I learned over the last couple of years too, and I still don't know all of them, but there's a lot of different kinds of or strains of probiotics as well. And there's a lot of different strains of bugs that live in your gut, both good and bad, like you said. And I know that you don't like to necessarily call them good and bad because it's an ecosystem. They literally they depend on each other to flourish and to live and to thrive. And for you to actually be healthy, you do need some bad bacteria, for the good bacteria eat the bad bacteria. And I think that's one thing that people need to think about too, is that, we're, especially for the last couple of years, we're made to think that germs can be bad, and they're not always bad. An excess of them, yes, could lead to things that we don't want, like you said, some disease or illness. And but yeah, germs aren't always bad.
Yes, I mean, I think that in our environment and then in our bodies, we have it's an ecosystem. And so to your point, when you start to get too much of certain things, they can be really, really harmful. And we don't want to be in that state, but we can go to the extreme of just completely getting rid of all these things when some of them are actually things that we want to hold on to and are really beneficial for us. And we're starting to understand what are some of those functions that our microbiome, our gut are doing for us that we really want to keep and enhance and hold on to.
How does our gut microbiome kind of influence our mental health or just our overall health in general?
Well, when we think about our overall health and mental health, I think there's two important things to know about our gut. The first is that it is one of the most important factors in your metabolism. All the food that we eat, after it gets through your stomach acid, is metabolized by these trillions of microbes that are in your gut. This is literally a factory of all these microbes that are metabolizing your foods, and they're popping out all these products that are then important for the signaling pathways in our body. And so, for example, one of the departments that is in your gut is responsible for stimulating your body's natural GLP-1 hormone. We've now heard about these GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy. What a lot of people don't know is that those drugs are mimicking something that your body actually naturally makes. So you have this natural GLP-1 hormone that this one department in your microbiome is stimulating. So when you eat, it metabolizes your food and it says, oh my gosh, we better increase the amount of GLP-1 that's in your bloodstream so that it can metabolize the sugars you just ate and tell your brain that you're full. And so that's really important, because what can happen is that all of us, when we eat, we get a sugar spike and a sugar crash. I mean, many of us are very aware of our sugar highs and our sugar crashes. But when you start to have metabolic disease, that's when your sugar highs are way too high or they're lasting way too long, and your crashes are way too low and they're lasting way too long. And so one of the things that your gut does is it helps stimulate GLP-1, which modulates all your highs and lows of these, crashes and highs of sugar so that they're a little bit more tempered. And the reason that that's important for our mental health is if you've ever been on a sugar high followed by a sugar crash, you know that it messes with your mind. If you have ever had food cravings for foods that your body doesn't really need, sugars, tons of carbs, fast foods, high-fat foods, these can lead you to actually have mental, increase your stress and anxiety and depression. These are all linked to our health. And so it turns out our metabolic health is very much tied to our brain health. And so if you don't have strong ability to metabolize sugars well, it actually can show up for you in kind of these mental health dysfunctions. The second thing is that your gut can actually very directly change your brain health through neurotransmitters. So we know our brain creates all these neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine and GABA, and those are really important to have the right levels at the right times for mental health. But your gut also makes a ton of these neurotransmitters. Your gut makes dopamine, serotonin, GABA, and then it has literally a connection from the gut to your brain called the vagus nerve, and it sends those neurotransmitters to your brain. And so your gut is literally affecting your brain function through the production of these neurotransmitters. And so for that reason, your gut is super important for your metabolic health, which leads to good mental health and directly responsible for your mental health through neurotransmitters.
But yeah, I started noticing almost from day one when I started taking that probiotic, a difference in how I felt and how I thought and how I started to think a little bit more clearly and just logically, where as my emotional roller coaster wasn't as steep and dramatic. It was slowly started to get, I kind of call it like more like a kiddie roller coaster versus the adult roller coaster.
Yeah. And I think that, it's amazing how quickly some people can really experience benefit. For some people, it takes a much longer period of time, but I think that's amazing that you almost immediately felt an impact. That means it really was kind of a deprivation of these certain microbial functions.
But I did do some diet and lifestyle changes as well during that time as well. But they still weren't dramatic. I still started small because I had some addictions like to Coca-Cola that I was not willing to give up at the time. So I was on another struggle bus there.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Atlanta, so I'm very familiar with the Coke addiction.
Yeah. So how can someone determine if they have an imbalance in their gut microbiome?
Yeah, I think most of us think of my gut must be out of whack if I'm having GI issues. So I'm having a lot of diarrhea or constipation, or I have a lot of gas or bloating. Those are certainly symptoms that your gut microbiome might be out of whack. But there are other things that happen that are also indicators that you don't have an optimized gut microbiome. Your metabolism is slowing down. And we just, kind of went a little bit into how your microbiome is important for stimulating GLP-1 hormone. But if that's not working, you might notice your metabolism is slowing down. You might notice that you have food cravings that you didn't used to have before. And conversely, food sensitivities that you didn't used to have before. You might be noticing that your energy levels are kind of a little bit more up and down throughout the day. So you get this post-lunch slump and you're just not as smart in a 2 p.m. meeting as you were in that 9 a.m. meeting. And you kind of don't have these sustained energy levels. And so some of these things like your energy wanes throughout the day, or particularly after you eat a meal, or your metabolism is slowed down, or you have these weird food cravings for foods that your body doesn't really need. These can be signs that your gut is not optimally functioning. And what can happen for a lot of us is that we don't even notice. It's like you're saying, the kiddie roller coaster. We don't even notice that these things are getting worse and worse and worse. And we find a lot of people who've started on our next generation probiotics and sort of say, I didn't even realize I was having that post-lunch slump until I went onto this. And now I realized, oh my gosh, my afternoons could be so much more productive once I'm not crashing out after lunch. And so I think there are all these kind of incremental little changes that happen to us as we age that we might not even recognize are happening, but we have an opportunity to optimize and bring back some of those functions.
I never realized how my metabolic health really was impacted. I just thought, I just had, mental health or, depression and anxiety. I never thought about the rest of my blood sugar crashes or anything. I never really knew what those blood sugar crashes actually looked like or why I felt so tired in the afternoon. No one ever talked to me either about what your blood sugar really is doing. And I think a lot of people don't really, unless they're diagnosed with diabetes or told that they have prediabetes, I don't think they really ever think about their blood sugars or their blood sugar levels ever.
No, that's totally correct. Unless diabetes runs in your family or you've been diagnosed, why would you be thinking about it at all? But one of the things that scientists are learning is that metabolic health is one of the most important fundamental things that is affecting all of your other health systems. And so if you can metabolize sugars optimally, you're actually helping with all of your other health systems. And this link to mental health, I think, is really important. And I'll tell you a funny story. When we started our company, I have two co-founders, and we would go pitch to all these investors our idea. And we got so many no's. So many people told us, we don't like your idea. And every once in a while, we'd be in a meeting, and both of my co-founders would notice that I was just like, couldn't answer questions, or I was a little bit grumpy, or just seemed like I was in a fog. And they started to carry around a granola bar with them so that they could make sure I was fed before we went into these meetings, because I was essentially experiencing sugar crash. And I didn't even realize it. And, these are stressful meetings, and there's a variety of reasons why you might not be on your A game. But they realized that if this woman is not fed and she's having a sugar crash, she's never going to be able to get us money for this company. And and sure enough, after we kind of made our first product, I wore a continuous glucose monitor, and I saw all my sugar highs and sugar crashes were minimized on this probiotic formulation. And I don't have diabetes. I don't have prediabetes. I am not overweight. I've never had a doctor say you should be worrying about how your body's metabolizing sugars. And I benefited from being on a intervention that helped me with my microbiome. I have better energy now. My workouts are stronger. I can go do a pitch in the afternoon and be a reasonable, sane person. I mean, all of these benefits that I didn't even realize I was subpar in really came out from having a better gut microbiome.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think too many people think everything, they like the excuse that, I'm just getting older. And, now that I'm in my 50s, I try desperately not to say that, because, I plan on living to like 120. So I got a long way yet before I get older, if I'm going to live that long. So
it's true. We kind of accept these things. Oh, when I get older, my metabolism is going to slow down. When I get older, I'm not going to be able to remember things. When I get on, and there's then when you add the list up together, I mean, getting older is really rough. And so anything we can do to kind of make it a little bit less rough, I think is helpful. And that's one of the reasons for us. I mean, certainly diet, nutrition is such an important part of having a healthy gut microbiome. But what we were really after is how can we help deliver these very important strains that, when paired with that good nutrition, can give it a real boost and really help you metabolize your foods better. And, you said earlier, maybe people aren't ready to make 1,000 changes in their day. But if it starts with, well, take this pill every morning to help give yourself these microbes, and then all the things you're doing throughout the day are really going to be elevated by having the right microbiome. And then you could step into, okay, what's the better nutrition to feed these bugs? And you can start to get onto that cycle of seeing benefit that allows you to then be motivated to do more and more. I think that is such a key, because, I know dietary change is super hard. I think unless you're seeing kind of a immediate benefit to it, it all just feels like mostly immediate pain.
Yeah, well, and especially when we live in such a fast world now, where we can have things delivered the same day or within 2 days, and I'm definitely guilty of that too. And I say this like on every episode, I feel like, but we all want things, now, we can see things instantly on the screen. We can get things instantly. And so we want that instant gratification. And so if we don't get it, we're going to move on to something else. So
it's true. It can be hard, but you're really investing in yourself. You're really investing in your today self and your future self, and you're worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's worth it. Yes, absolutely. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your newest product is that you have?
Sure. Well, I'll start by talking about the older product that we have, which is
yes.
Pendulum Glucose Control. And I can see you've got a bottle there, which is awesome. This is our flagship product. That's actually the product that I take. And it was formulated and designed in order to help people with diabetes lower their A1C and lower their blood glucose spikes. And it's clinically proven to do that. It's published. We did placebo-controlled, double-blinded randomized trials in order to show the efficacy. And that's really the beginnings of understanding how we can impact metabolism, because we're helping people all the way at the end of the spectrum where they have metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. And I think you've had some experience with that product as well, right?
Yes, correct. It's actually the one go-to that I keep in my rotation at all times for myself, and actually my husband as well. But yeah, that's my favorite one. I feel the best on it. And I noticed that for my husband as well, we just feel better. We work out more now. That's definitely our go-to. I have some clients actually that I refer to the glucose control as well, mainly because I think it's just a good all-around product. It's got several strains in it. And so I know that when you're on the struggle bus, when it comes to your gut health, you need as many good microbes as you can get. And so that's usually the one I go to. And like I said earlier, I don't think enough people realize that they are on a blood sugar roller coaster. So when they kind of come to me and tell me some of the symptoms that they're having, and I actually have them start testing their own blood sugars. Like you said, you've used the continuous glucose monitor. I think it definitely really opens their eyes a little bit. And so then when they start taking the glucose control and they start making a couple changes in their diet and lifestyle, they've noticed quite a difference just with how they feel as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you understanding how your body's responding to glucose is really eye-opening, and particularly how your body's responding to different foods is really eye-opening. And I remember, one of the biggest changes for me was around grapefruit juice. So I used to do like a little shot of grapefruit juice in the morning because it made me feel so good. And like, this is juice and it's citrus and vitamin C and all this wonderful stuff. And when I wore a continuous glucose monitor, I realized that I was starting my day with this insane spike. And I don't get that same spike with other types of juices. Like orange juice doesn't do the same thing. There's something about grapefruit juice that was doing that. And moreover, if I just ate breakfast and then had my grapefruit juice, that really changed the dynamics of that spike. And so, first of all, I really don't drink grapefruit juice anymore because those set of spikes really scared me. But moreover, I now realize, okay, I'm going to eat my protein part of my breakfast, and then I'm going to, if I'm going to have juice, I'm going to do that afterwards. And so you can learn so much about the little things that you can do. You're eating the same thing, you're drinking the same stuff, but it's just a sequencing thing when you're really paying attention to your glucose levels. So Pendulum Glucose Control is that full formulation. It's kind of expensive and it has to be refrigerated. And so we created the GLP-1 probiotic, which is our new product, in order to kind of address some of those issues. So the GLP-1 probiotic is a subset of what's in Pendulum Glucose Control, and it is the strains that specifically stimulate your GLP-1 hormone. So to date, there are only 2 strains that have ever been published to be able to stimulate GLP-1, and those 2 strains are in that formulation, and you are not going to find these strains in your current over-the-counter probiotics that are on the shelves right now. So these are new next-generation strains. They don't start with lactobacillus or bifidobacterium. They are Akkermansia muciniphila and Clostridium butyricum. We have a 3rd strain in there which we know functions with these 3 in order to stimulate the GLP-1 probiotic. So if you want to kind of ease in and really focus on stimulating your body's natural GLP-1 hormone, you're really going after these food cravings. We found that after 6 weeks on that probiotic formulation, 91% of people have reduced food cravings using the food cravings inventory, which is a diagnostic test that looks at your cravings for, everybody knows which category they fall into, but you either have cravings for sugars, carbs, fast foods, or high fat foods, or sometimes, a combination or all 4. And this food cravings inventory really quantitates your cravings on all 4 of those. And we found that 91% of people had reductions across all 4 of those food cravings types by just giving their body these microbial formulations. And then if you want the full formulation that adds a couple other strains that you pointed out, then that's what Pendulum Glucose Control is.
Oh, that's great. I didn't realize that. What's the additional strain that is in the GLP-1?
The 3rd strain in there is Bifidobacterium infantis. This is actually a relatively common strain. It's actually one of the first strains that seeds in your microbiome as an infant, and it plays a really important role in the upstream short-chain fatty acid production.
And so you said with the 3 of them, that's how they kind of work tandemly all together?
Yeah, they're part of this ecosystem. They work together. They're able to stimulate, when you eat food, they're able to stimulate your body's natural GLP-1 production. And so that's how they work on your food cravings.
Well, I know that a lot of people don't really think about their gut health when it comes to weight, and you kind of touched on weight earlier. And so maybe this can kind of I know GLP-1 is a hot topic right now, like you said, with the Ozempics and the Wegovy's and semaglutides. And personally, I think that if you're going to do something naturally is the better way to go versus something that's going to be synthetic. Is there something that maybe you can kind of touch on? Because I think that some people have a panic or a fear that if I stop taking it, am I going to gain weight? Or is there something that maybe you can reassure them that because this is something that's natural, your body should be making GLP-1 anyways, and it's a natural process in your body?
Yeah, well, we can start by talking about the difference between the drugs and the natural GLP-1 hormone that your body makes, and then kind of what to expect and how you can enable your body to do the natural GLP-1 hormone stimulation better. And so the primary difference between the drug and this probiotic formulation is that the probiotic formulation essentially allows you to have the right gut microbiome to stimulate your body's natural GLP-1 hormone. And the way that that's supposed to work is you eat a meal, these strains tell your body, release GLP-1, and you get an increase in GLP-1 in your blood. And that tells your body, metabolize all the sugars that you just ate, and it tells your brain, we're full, we just ate, we don't need to eat anymore. Those are the two really important things that GLP-1 hormone does. Metabolize the sugars that you just ate and tell your brain, we're not hungry anymore. And then what happens over time is your GLP-1 should go down in your bloodstream, and then you get hungry again. And then you eat another meal, and then it goes up, and you metabolize your sugars, and your brain tells you you're full. And so you're supposed to be on a cycle of the GLP-1 hormone. That's the natural way your body is supposed to work. The GLP-1 drugs are trying to mimic that natural hormone. And so they're a synthetic chemical version of that hormone, and you inject it directly into your bloodstream. And because they're synthetic, they don't have this like you go up and you go down natural cycle. They just stay at really high levels all the time. And so I sort of liken it to a loudspeaker. So if I was talking to you through a megaphone, you would definitely be able to hear me more clearly. But over time, you're going to go deaf. And that is literally what happens in our system. If you keep hammering your body with this signaling pathway, we know that there's evidence that your beta cells can start to go deaf. They can start to not respond anymore to this signal. And so you kind of run this risk of all the side effects that come with taking a drug, but then also this risk that in the long run, you're actually going to be doing detriment to your body. And so being able, and I'm not anti on the drugs, but if you're looking for a natural, more sustainable way, going after your gut microbiome is definitely the way to do it. And so here, you're really teaching your body to fish. If you can get these strains to colonize in your gut, you are going to reap the benefits of your body being able to make its own GLP-1. If you can get the strains to colonize, you don't have to be on these pills forever. I mean, if you have a good diet where you're feeding the strains through your nutrition, you can colonize these strains on your own, and then you've really taught your body how to make its own GLP-1. The downside is you're not going to see the same immediate efficacy that you see with these drugs. I mean, they really are the megaphone. And so you're not going to get that really amplified, loud, immediate impact, but you're also not going to go deaf. And you can also go off of these and you're not going to immediately then not be able to hear anything. And so it does there's two sides of the coin. One, you're not going to see such an immediate impact, but then you're also going to be doing something that for your body long-term is really teaching it how to make its own GLP-1. So you don't have to be on it forever, and you're not going to have this terrible rebound when you go off of them.
So yeah, hopefully that can be a really good key thing that somebody can kind of remember, especially when it comes to their own health and they're trying to weigh their options and figure out what they want to do rather than just jumping in. Because sometimes, and again, not with necessarily with this drug, but sometimes doctors don't always do a good job of explaining the pros and cons of going with a drug. And so they just encourage someone or explain why they want them to go on this drug, whether it be cholesterol or whatever. But sometimes it's nice to get the full information so you can make an informed decision. And I don't think that enough patients or clients get enough explanation or help in that area.
So many of us are online talking to Dr. Google every day, trying to figure things out ourselves.
Yeah. So what does GLP-1, you talked a lot about what it does in the gut, but how does that kind of help or signals things in our brain that maybe that might help us feel fuller, or does it help satisfy us longer?
Yeah, it's an interesting and I would say not entirely understood mechanism, but it literally is the same hormone, this GLP-1 hormone, helps trigger your insulin release, which helps you metabolize your sugars, and it also somehow sends a signal to your brain that you're full. And so I think that part is not totally well understood yet, but we know that that is something that people experience. And so at the extreme end, this megaphone drug version, some people, when they go on the drug, they almost feel nauseous because they're getting this over signal to their brain of not being hungry, to the point of almost feeling, sick, or the idea of food is making them feel nauseous. And so I don't think we fully understand how that signaling pathway is working, but we do know that it is part of your body's natural way to say, we don't need to keep eating. And for people who are constantly hungry and they have, actually many people walk around with food noise, meaning they're thinking about their next meal, they're thinking about food, is constantly on the mind. And so if you're experiencing that, it could just be that your body's not making enough of this GLP-1 hormone, or it's making it at not the right times and you're not on the right cycle. And if you can get onto that right cycle, that you can eliminate these food cravings for things that you don't really need. And that is kind of the unknown but important thing that the GLP-1 hormone does.
Well, and who would be like an ideal, call a candidate for taking the GLP-1 probiotic?
Anyone who is trying to modulate your food cravings. Anyone who is, I think I read recently, something like 85% of women are walking around with food noise. And as a result of that, walking around with food guilt, meaning you are thinking about all the foods you're not supposed to be eating all the time. And then you eat something that you feel like you're not supposed to, and then you're guilty about it. And so when you think about if you are somebody who's like, yeah, oh my gosh, I'm craving a brownie at 2 p.m. every day and I wish I wasn't. Or if you're someone who's like, oh, I just downed a bag of potato chips, I feel really terrible about making that decision. It turns out that it might be your gut microbes that are telling you to make those poor decisions. And so if you can get them back in line and you can reintroduce the strains that are going to help you with those food cravings, you're a candidate. So if you're somebody who is getting food cravings that you don't want, or you have food noise that you're trying to kind of quiet down, you're a candidate for increasing your body's GLP-1 production. You're a candidate for doing that through this probiotic formulation.
Well, gosh, I think that's just about everybody, man, woman, child. I think that's pretty much everybody. So you mentioned that the glucose control is better off to keep it refrigerated. Is the GLP-1 not need to be refrigerated like the glucose control?
That's correct. So the GLP-1 probiotic does not have to be refrigerated. And it's also, because it's not the full number of strains, it's also a lower price point. So it does have some very practical advantages to it.
Well, that's good to know. Although I keep all of mine in the refrigerator anyways, just because it's safer for me. That's where I happen to keep them. I keep my omega-3s in there as well.
Yeah, I think, generally speaking, most of these products do have a more of a longevity if you keep them refrigerated, although you don't have to. And more importantly, if you've got a routine and you're opening your fridge and you're like, these are all the things that I do in the morning or in the evening, it's kind of nice to have them all right there together.
So what are some things that can kind of either really help your GLP-1 or really hurt your GLP-1? And maybe if somebody wants to make some changes, they can think about maybe tweaking one or two of those things.
Yeah, I think if you want to help stimulate your body's natural GLP-1 production, there are probably, I would say, 4 key things to think about. The first thing is to not go on an antibiotic unless you really need to. And there are certainly times in which you do need to go onto an antibiotic to kill a bacterial infection. But if you don't have to, consider not going on an antibiotic kind of unnecessarily. So just be thoughtful about it. To your point, ask your physician, what are the pros and cons? What can I be doing to help mitigate all the bad things this antibiotic is doing to my body? The second thing is you can increase your dietary fiber intake. And so if you think about when you go into your grocery store, the produce section where all those leafy greens are, so increasing how much kale and collard greens and asparagus and artichokes, those are all great ways to increase your dietary fiber. And then if you walk on over to the beans section, black beans, lentils, these are also really amazing sources of dietary fiber. these are the food that feed these strains that we're talking about here, these next generation strains that can help you stimulate your GLP-1 production. So you're literally, these microbes only eat what you give them to eat. And so if you can get some of those high fiber foods and you're really helping to feed them. The third thing is to, again, feed them with polyphenols. And so, again, if you're in your produce section, think about all those berries. So raspberries, pomegranates, these are great sources of polyphenols. Also, dark chocolate and red wine. These are good sources of polyphenols too. And so being able to increase your polyphenol intake will also feed these strains and help to increase their growth. And then the last thing is to directly supplement with these strains that can stimulate your GLP-1 production. And that's really what Pendulum has been focused on. So up until we created these formulations, those first three were the only things that were available to people. And now you have a fourth, which is to actually give yourself back these strains that can help you stimulate GLP-1. So don't go on antibiotics if you don't have to. Increase your dietary fiber, increase your dietary polyphenols, and takes the probiotic supplements designed to increase GLP-1
I just bought a jicama yesterday, so that's definitely going to help. That's definitely going to help my fiber.
That is, jicama's great.
Yeah, I haven't had one in a while, so I'm excited about having it. And this time of year is usually when they start to bring out a lot of extra pomegranates. So that's also my favorite time of year too, because that's definitely good for it as well for polyphenols. Although Pendulum does make a polyphenol product as well.
We do. We have a polyphenol supplement. We essentially looked for the key polyphenols that help that strain of Akkermansia in there to grow. And we narrowed it down to pomegranate, green tea, and grapeseed. And so we basically took those extracts, put them into a pill, so that that's another way to get your polyphenols is through that polyphenol formulation, which is specifically designed for the Akkermansia that's in our product.
And you mentioned sleep earlier, and how can sleep really impact your GLP-1? Because that's another area I think that people don't really pay too much attention to. I think they think sometimes if they get 4 or maybe 5 hours of sleep a night, that's good enough, or they sleep for 2 hours. They're up for 2 hours and then they sleep for 3 more hours. They think that that's enough. So how can sleep really impact GLP-1 and your gut health?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm one of those people who, if I don't get at least 8 hours, I am a really hard person to be around. So anybody who is even able to function on less than that, I'm just really impressed by. But you're not really doing your biological systems a lot of favors by trying to get by on as little sleep as possible, because there are a lot of things that happen while we're sleeping that are important for regenerating systems in our bodies. And people who don't get enough sleep, or people who are sleep deprived, they have less glucose tolerance. Their ability to metabolize sugars is deficient, and it's somehow associated with this worse sleep. And I don't think it's entirely understood how those two things are linked, or what your body is doing during sleep time to really replenish all the things that are needed to help you metabolize sugars. But we do know there's this link, and we know that if you are sleep deprived, people who don't get as much sleep, you are likely not optimally producing GLP-1 or able to metabolize your sugars as well. And so you might be experiencing a lot more of these issues. And so I don't know that the science is exactly there to explain exactly how that's happening, but those correlations are really strong.
Yeah, I know every doctor that I've ever heard talk about it or that I've talked with, they all say the same thing, that sleep is, if you're going to fix something, that's one of the first things to definitely address, because it's definitely going to help with your blood sugars first and foremost. And when you have an improper gut balance, like you said, it's going to just help weight. I don't think people definitely associate it with weight, skin issues, mental health, like you said, blood sugars as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you're tired, it really interferes with your ability to make good decisions. And I think that having good nutrition is one of those things where if there's any reason to not have good nutrition, oh my gosh, we're all over it. And so anything you can do to help get that willpower and that strength to be able to make good decisions can really help you, benefit in a wide variety of health issues. And so some of the things that can help you, of course, getting sleep and being able to have the mental strength to be able to make good choices, is first and foremost. And then also having the right gut health to be able to metabolize and make good choices is important. And you can get onto this really bad cycle where you're making poor food choices, and then you feel rotten about that. And then that leads you to make more bad food choices. And then you feel more rotten. And so you can be on this like really, I think, spiral of bad choices and then bad outcomes. And the good news is you can interject at any time that you want to, and really trying to get good sleep, trying to boost your gut health, and trying to do these little things that can help you get onto that good cycle. Because once you start feeling good, you'll make better nutrition choices, and then you'll feel like exercising more. And then that's going to lead you to want to eat better and better foods. And, you can get onto this really great cycle. It's just literally the exact opposite of those poor cycles. And so any little things people can do to help get onto that good cycle, you kind of see it play out in spades.
I know that I had Christina on, and she kind of went over some of the things about how the Pendulum products kind of survive. Maybe you could touch on how the Pendulum products kind of survive and can withstand getting from the package to where it's supposed to go in the gut.
Yes, I think if you are thinking about taking a probiotic, there are 3 really important things to look for. The first is that what is in that pill is live bacteria. And that is literally the definition of a probiotic. It's a live bacteria that you can introduce into your gut. How do you know if there's a live bacteria in there? Sometimes the label will tell you if it's not live, but this is also a great opportunity to talk directly with your healthcare provider who can help guide you on brands that are more reliable and have higher quality so that you can be kind of not bamboozled by the millions of fly-by-nighters that are out there. And I'll just, a little sidebar story. One of our colleagues who's a professor at Cornell recently told me that he bought a bunch of products called Akkermansia off of Amazon. So they literally have on the label that they're Akkermansia, and he DNA sequenced all of them. And he said only one of them actually had Akkermansia in it, and it was Pendulum's Akkermansia. And that there are people who are literally putting all kinds of random things into their bottle, and they're saying they're Akkermansia. So super important to understand that what you're getting is not just about the lowest price product out there, but it's about the quality of what you're getting. So first you want to look for a live bacteria from a reliable source. The second thing you want to look for is an enteric-coated capsule. And so the reason that's important is because when you consume the capsule, it has to make it through your stomach acid. And so you're only going to see that if it's enteric-coated. And the third is that it has a time-delayed release, because actually where your gut microbiome is it has to get through your stomach acid all the way through the GI tract to the distant end, the distal colon. That's where all the action is happening. And so you want to have something that has a live bacteria. So when it gets there, it's delivering good goods. So live bacteria, enteric-coated to get through the stomach acid, and time delayed so it gets all the way to the distal colon. Then you've got at least a chance of having the 3 components that get you the product where you need it to be delivered.
Yeah, I don't think that I know that I definitely didn't think about it until literally last year when I started taking Pendulum and I started talking to Christina about it, because it never really dawned on me that, first of all, yeah, it has to make it through the stomach acid. And how can any probiotic really make it through the stomach acid? Especially when it's not in a capsule or something like that. That's the part that the layperson me, has a hard time understanding as well. Not to say that some can't, but yeah, you definitely want it to hit the intended target and where it's supposed to go. Because like you said, different spots in the colon do different things, and they all have a different job to do. But you want it to get to the main part where it's supposed to flourish and activate and work with the rest of the body, so your body absorbs it as well.
Exactly. I sort of liken it to, it's all about delivery. It's all about delivering to the location that you wanted to get to. So if I said to you, I'm going to give you $1 million, would you rather me put that $1 million into a suitcase, knock on your door and hand it to you? Or would you rather me call you and say, oh, I just spread it all over Highway 101? Well, you'd be pretty pissed if I spread it all over Highway 101, because everybody would be stopping to gather your dollar bills. You want me to deliver directly to you. And that's really where the delivery comes into play. You don't want to be scattering it all along the way where it's not going to get where it needs to get to. You want to deliver it right to the place that it intended to get to. And that means you have to invest in the suitcase. You have to invest in driving to this person's house and handing it to them. And that's really the investment that we've made in ensuring that it's getting delivered where it needs to get to.
Well, I know that usually I point everyone towards full script now, just because it's the easiest place for me to recommend things to my clients for both Pendulum products and other things as well. And I know that that's a trusted source. for all definitely Pendulum items. But I do know that I can also refer them to Pendulum website as well. And I'll put a link in the show notes for people so they can either shop either at FullScript if they want to take a look at the Pendulum products, or directly to your website as well.
Thank you. Yes. And I think FullScript does a great job of ensuring that everything that's on there is high quality. So if if you have a choice between shopping on Amazon or FullScript, I 100% push you to FullScript if you're worried about quality. But even if you don't buy directly from us, if you go to our website, pendulumlife.com, we have a lot of material on there. If you want to just learn and read about the different products and how they're working, all of that is on our website. And so either place you purchase is fantastic. But if you want to learn a little bit more, we have all of that on our website. And I think that we're also giving your listeners a specific discount so that they can lower the barrier to trial and get a discount off their first bottle.
Yes, I think it's 20%.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, for their first month's membership. And they just use the code FORGIVEN as well. So I'll put that in the show notes as well for them to click and link. So before we go, I always ask my guests for their don't miss this moment. And it would be the one key takeaway that they'd really want someone to remember from the conversation or about the topic. What would your don't miss this moment be?
I think the most important thing for people to recognize is that your gut health is at the center of all of your health, and that there are next generation probiotics that can help you tackle everything that you can imagine. And there's more research and more discovery coming out, but pay attention to your gut. It's super important.
100% agree. And I'm so glad that you were able to be on today and definitely helping people understand not just Pendulum products, but about their gut health and to hopefully take back some of their overall health, really.
Absolutely. So great to be on with you. And thanks for spreading the good word about how important gut health is.
Today's episode is brought to you by Pendulum, a leader in gut health support. Did you know that our gut health can influence everything from our energy levels to our immune system? Pendulum's specialized probiotics are designed to help rebalance your gut microbiome and support a healthier you. Whether you're looking to manage blood sugars, improve digestion, or boost overall wellness, Pendulum offers clinically backed products to help you achieve those goals. Give your gut the support it deserves with Pendulum. Click the link below and use my code FORGIVEN to get 20% off your first month subscription. If you want to continue learning and hearing all things nutrition for your mind, body, and soul, click like, subscribe, or favorite me on whatever podcast platform you use, or you can find me at ForgivenNutritionist.com. This podcast was designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to achieve your health and wellness goals. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any illness or medical condition or take the place of any treatments from your current healthcare providers.